Hi, everybody. My name's Casey Timmy. Hey, I got a wave. Hope you're having fun today. You'll see stickers on the table. Please feel free to grab the motivational stickers for your laptops and your Stanley Cups and whatever you put stickers on these days. It is my honor to introduce our Chancellor, Mario Castillo, and fellow Chevron Houston marathoner. Woo! So thanks again for coming, and I will let him take it away.
Hello, thank you. So what Casey left out though is that she finishes in 3.5 hours and it takes me almost 5. That's the difference. We don't run it together, we run the same one. She's much faster than I am. And for those of you that wonder, that's like about 7-minute miles, folks. So that's running 26 7-minute miles. So Casey, good job. So my name is Mario Castillo and I'm the Chancellor of Lone Star College System. And so the first question I always get is, what is the Chancellor? Right? Because a lot of people don't know what the Chancellor is. So the Chancellor is the CEO of the entire system. So Lone Star College has 8 colleges, of which Tomball is one. And each college has a president. Those presidents report to an executive vice chancellor, and then the executive vice chancellor reports up to me. And so I am the boss, essentially, of the entire system. That's my job. And so I want to I think we have about a little less than an hour. Is that correct? One is the, okay. All right, so I just want to make sure. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because one of the first pieces of advice that I have is you should always, and I don't know why I'm talking to this thing because this thing's not even on, but one of the things I think you should always be critical of is who you take advice from. Not everyone has the standing to give you advice, right? And the first piece of advice that I have for you is never take advice from someone about how to do a thing that has not done that thing. So one more time, never take advice about how to do a thing from someone that has never done the thing. And there's a lot of really well-intentioned people that will give you advice and they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. None. They mean well, they just don't know, right? So rule number 1 is always, always, always take advice from people that have done the thing. So let me tell you some of the things that I've done in life and then to get ready for today. So I'm a first-generation American. My parents are both from a little small town in Mexico called Rancho de Santiago in Chihuahua. So mis padres son chihuahuenses, yo hablo español nativamente. Español es mi primer idioma. So Spanish is my first language, actually. So I was in ESL for most of the time that I was in elementary school. So my mother only went to middle school. She didn't even go to high school. My father went to high school, but graduated from high school in a different country. So between both of my parents, they have one high school diploma. And so one of the things that I want to tell you is, and I had a huge family of 12 aunts and uncles on one side, 8 on the other. Right? So I have 20 aunts and uncles. I have cousins that I don't even know. Like sometimes they will appear and I will say, are you really part of my family tree? Who is your parent? And then I have to call that person and be like, is this person for real? And so it's a huge family. In that entire huge family, I was the first person to go to college, right? Out of 100 cousins. Thank you. And so my lifelong dream was to go to law school. I always wanted to be a lawyer, right? And I can tell you that when I was in Mexico, I remember having a conversation. I was about 3rd grade, and I'm gonna keep it in English, but it was in Spanish. And so I was telling someone in 3rd grade when we were in school in Mexico, and I'll tell you what the name of my school was. The name of my school was Los Niños Héroes. That for those of you who don't know, that's actually a really cool story. If you don't know Los Niños Héroes, so I believe it's when the French army was attacking Chapultepec in Mexico, it was actually a military academy. And there was cadets at that military academy that climbed to the top of Chapultepec, El Castillo de Chapultepec, and one of them wrapped themselves in the Mexican flag and jumped off rather than let the enemy capture the flag. And so in Mexico, they're called Los Niños Héroes, which means the heroes that are children, right? And so that was the name of the school that I went to. And I was telling someone in 3rd grade, I said, I want to be a lawyer in the United States, and they laughed. They said, you don't even live in the United States. You don't even speak English. At 25 years old, I became a lawyer in the United States. And then I got one of the coolest jobs when I graduated from law school. I got one of the coolest jobs you can get. I went to go work for a federal judge. And so I spent 4 years writing legal opinions for a federal judge. And that was really cool. While I was in law school, I was recruited by the CIA to be an open source officer working their Spanish desk in Spain. Now, my wife wouldn't move to Spain. That was a bridge too far, so I had to say no. But I can even answer questions about what it's like to be recruited by the CIA. It's scary, let me just tell you. So I did that. Then I was in private practice. I'm board certified in labor and employment law because at some point I said to myself, being a lawyer is not enough. I want to be board certified lawyer. So I became board certified a few years later. By 30, I had written a book. I'd been published multiple times and argued a case at the Supreme Court. In fact, I can tell you at 29 years old, I argued a case at the Supreme Court that if you're undocumented and you have financial aid, it's because I won that lawsuit. Because someone was challenging Lone Star's ability to give financial aid to undocumented students. And so I got the lawsuit, and it was very personal to me, and I worked constantly on it. And I had an associate at the time who was still, actually she was an intern, she was still in law school, she was a second-year law student at the time. And I hired her 12 years ago. Yes, 12. Yes, 12. And she's now our chief legal officer, and that's Nancy Molina. And she was my associate on that lawsuit. And so the reason I'm telling you that is when I had that lawsuit, I remember the lawyer on the other side was a former Supreme Court justice. So there I am, I'm 29, 30 years old. And my opposing counsel is the former Texas Supreme Court justice. And this person was really condescending to me, sent me a lot of sort of really condescending emails. Just, okay. And when we won the lawsuit, I just hit forward and said, what up now? I didn't get a reply, sadly. But at 31, I became the general counsel, which is the chief legal officer of this institution. A year later, I became vice chancellor and general counsel. 2 years later, after that, I became COO and general counsel. I was the college president at Keynote for a year. And then I came back and was COO again. And a year ago, actually 13 months ago, I became the 5th chancellor at Lone Star College, the first person of color and the youngest person ever to be chancellor at this institution. And so that's what I've done to get to this podium, right? And so what did I do to prepare for this presentation? So I read this book. I actually read the book. Then I'd never actually watched the show. So then I had to watch all 3 seasons, right? Because luckily, Dr. Nutt, thank you so much for having me because you gave me more than enough time. So I was able to watch the 3 seasons of the show, read the book. And one of the really cool things, one of the first tips that I have for you, here's one of my lifetime dreams. And this is really nerdy, but I'm just gonna put it out there. One of the things that I do when I read a book is I flip to the bibliography and I count how many of the books I've read. And my goal is to one day read a book where I've read all of the bibliography. And let me just tell you, for this one, I came somewhat close. There are 41 books that this book is based on. I've read 33 of them, right? And so when I'm reading this, I'm like, oh yes, this is where you're getting this from. This is where you're getting this from. Like I can piece together in my mind where the book is coming from. And so I'm here today to talk to you about 11 rules of leadership, and I don't have a PowerPoint, so you're just gonna have to be entertained by me. All right, so rule number 1, leadership is life. And so in the show, he says, football is life, right? Like that's what he keeps saying, except for when he kills that dog. I guess I should announce spoiler alerts. I didn't tell you what dog, right? So he kills this dog and then it's, football is death for a while and he gets all depressed and it's sad. But really sort of the main point of that rule is there's leadership in everyday life, right? And leadership isn't restricted to the CEO position. So I can tell you that from the very first job that I had, which was vacuuming, when my mom cleaned houses, she would take me with her. And my job as the eldest son was vacuuming the carpets of the houses she was cleaning. And when I would ask for pay, she would say, when you eat tonight, that's your pay, right? And so let me tell you, like when I used to vacuum, I would love to get my little lines perfect. So you know when you're vacuuming, how like when you pull the vacuum, it leaves this little line? There's something very soothing about pulling that vacuum back. And then when you go back forward, you can do a little diagonal, and then you pull right back, right? Or if you're mowing a lawn, right? Who likes getting like the lawn blades to flip the other way? The point is this, right? No matter what you do in life, vacuuming, mowing a lawn, going to school, it can be done with excellence. And let me just tell you something. There's something really, really awesome about watching anyone who's doing something in an excellent manner. Like that's one of my favorite entertainments. Like I will sit there and watch roofers. If they're roofing with excellence, I'm like, man, this is really amazing. Who here has carried one of those roofing shingle things on your shoulder? They're really heavy. And if you watch some of these guys and gals, they will throw them over their shoulders and run up a ladder. When I get up a ladder, I'm like, right? But these guys will run up a ladder holding like 50 shingles that are super heavy up and down all day. It's being done with excellence, right? Don't tell me to go put a roof on your house and it's gonna leak, right? And I'm super, super into mowing lawns, so I can tell when a lawn has been mowed with excellence and when it hasn't. And so leadership is that same way. A lot of people are like, I'm gonna wait to become a leader until I'm the CEO. Let me just tell you, if there's any cosmic justice in the universe, you will not become a CEO if you're not a good leader. It just doesn't work that way. You have to be the leader first, and then little by little, you get trusted with more. So when I used to work at a private law firm, let me tell you how it worked. People wanted to be lawyers. I'd say, great. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make copies of this brief. And you would say to yourself, what does this have to do with being a lawyer? I wanted to see if they kept track of how good the copies read. Because here's the thing, there's a way to even make copies with excellence. Do you know how? Fonts. Why are fonts important? I can tell you, for example, that I always write my emails, especially widespread emails, in Book Antiqua. Because Book Antiqua, when you print it multiple times, the copy is easier to read. So here, who has held a contract that you can barely read? Because it's terrible font, right? Exactly, it's in terrible font. And so that would be one of the tests. And if you thought like, I went to a really top law school and you should let me write a brief, out of here. There are no small jobs, only small people. There's no such thing as anything being done poorly because it's not an important job. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? And I can tell you, my immigrant father, that's one of the things that he taught me. He said, son, if someone hands you a broom, you teach them how a room should be swept. And my mother used to say, we might not have the nicest things, they might not be the newest things, but they will be the cleanest things. Because a lot of times in life, you can't control the money that you make, but you can control how clean your things are. You can control how organized your things are. You can show pride and gratitude for the things that you have. And here's the thing about leadership is when you act that way, when you are grateful for the things that you have, people want to give you more. Because all of you have been in a situation where you have given something to someone that was maybe very valuable to you and those people did not appreciate it. Does that make you want to give someone more? No. But think about when you give someone something as valuable as your time, which you're giving me today. So your time is as valuable as mine. So imagine that I came up here and I'm like, I haven't read the book. I'm just going to BS my way through this presentation. That's disrespectful to you and your time, because your time is as important as mine. So think about who you give your time to, because even if you don't have money, let me just tell you, I do all right now, but I can't buy years, right? Some of you are sitting in the audience like, I wish I was this guy. I'm sitting up here saying, I wish I was some of you, because I can't go back. right? One of the things that all of that accomplishment did is I don't remember my 20s because I was in a law library and a library most of my 20s. By the time I looked up, I was 30 and I was barely graduated from law school and getting going, right? And that's the part that people don't tell you. So whether or not I made the right decisions is up to you based on your values and the things that you see. Okay, that's the other thing about advice. Advice should be given based on the values of the recipient, not on the values of the giver. Right? So I made a very conscious decision when I started private practice that I'm going to be at my law firm 24/7. For a lot of you, that is a completely crazy idea. That's not what you want to do, and that's okay. Right? And so when you ask for advice, spend some time with the person and say, here are the things that I value. I value my family. I value the time with my boyfriend or my girlfriend, right? With my kids. Now, based on my value set, what's your advice? Because that way you get advice that is more personal to you. And so I can tell you that a lot of the people that I promote across this college, it's their work product that speaks for them. So a lot of people, like I literally just had a meeting with somebody right before this meeting where they thought it was an interview and I actually showed up to offer them the job. They even had a little presentation, so I let the person go through the presentation. But before this person even went through the presentation, I had already decided I'm gonna offer this person the job. And you ask why? Because this person had a reputation for doing excellent work. And I had seen the work product. And perhaps this person didn't think that anyone would ever notice or care. But that work product made its way to my desk. And I said, find out who made this for me. And I wanna go meet this person. And that's literally sometimes in everyday life, no matter if you're a part-time employee, again, you can be a leader from the part-time position. One of my first paid part-time jobs at a real place other than working for my mom was working a fast food counter. And I also bagged groceries. So let me tell you, when I bagged groceries at my grocery store, I took it real serious, folks. Super serious. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a real intense person, right? Because my father raised me to be a really serious person. If we're gonna do something, we do it right. And I was the eldest, so I had a responsibility. And I had the burden of being a first-generation American. So imagine your parents give up everything they've ever known so that you can shoot your shot. You don't sit on the couch, right? You shoot your shot. And so I had all that pressure. So when I sack groceries, let me tell you, there's a way to sack groceries with excellence. I'm gonna give you this little tip. Do you know what it is? When you sack a bag of groceries in a plastic bag, you should be able to slide it down the floor and it doesn't tip. And if it tips, it wasn't sacked correctly. Think about that for a second. Bag of groceries, you throw it. There's actually sacking competitions, and I'm a big enough nerd where I competed, and I was mad that I didn't win regionals, right? And let me just tell you the corporate greed aspect of it, why they do it, because later on I learned that plastic bags are the most expensive part of a grocery store other than labor, right? When I worked fast food, I wanted to get my cars as quickly as possible through my queue. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, any job, it doesn't matter. You can be a leader in that job, and that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't be a seagull, right? Good leaders don't just swoop in. No one likes to have, like, imagine that you're like mowing the lawn, right? Let's go back to mowing the lawn. So you're mowing the lawn and you're about halfway through and someone comes in and is like, get out of the way, you're mowing it wrong. And then they start mowing it and they're like, now, how do I handle this thing? Right? That happens all the time. You have leaders that are like, have no idea what actually it means to do a job, and they swoop in and they're like, this is how we're gonna do it, with no concept of what's actually involved. So let me tell you what I do and what I recommend you do. And Ted Lasso does, right? He spends a lot of time sort of researching what is involved. So I'm making changes to this institution. So let me tell you what I did. I went on LinkedIn and I said, hey guys, I need recommendations for the history of higher ed. Give me one book. And it ended up being like 23 books. Now, how would you pick which of the 23 to read? You don't pick, you read all of them. So I'm reading all 23 of them, right? From the very beginning. So when I sit in a room and I'm like, hey, listen, this is the changes that we're gonna make, and somebody's like, where are you getting this from? I have done the work to be able to say, okay, let me explain some to you. The very first college in America that survived is Harvard. It was built in 1636. You see how like official I already sound rather than, listen to me because I'm the boss. Right? Like you're already like, oh, this Harvard, 1636. I want to know more. Right? What was the second college? The College of William and Mary. What was the third college? Yale. You see that? And so you have to have credibility, and the way that you get credibility is by doing the work. Like I told you when I first started, I've read 33 of the 41 books that this book is based on. Right? So I've done the work. You have to do the work. You can't just show up and, as I say, be Hollywood, because you will get exposed. Right? Sooner or later, if you're not for real, if you're faking it till you make it, you will make it to somewhere and you will be exposed for the fraud that you are. As opposed to, if you do the work, when someone lets you do your shot, shoot your shot, you make it. Right? Like one of the greatest examples of this is Tom Brady. So if you look at the New England Patriots history, when Tom Brady took over, it's because Drew Bledsoe got hurt on some random play. He was so ready, because he had done the work, that he literally got the perennial Drew Bledsoe kicked off of the Pats, and he took over, and then they won the most NFL championships in the history of the NFL. Now imagine that Tom Brady gets his shot, and he hasn't been practicing. And so if you swoop in like a seagull and you haven't done your stuff, you're going to get exposed for the fraud that you are. And then people aren't going to take you seriously. Because how dare you? Right? Because here's the thing. If someone actually knows what they're doing and we don't know what we're doing, then so long as the message is delivered a certain way, we want to listen. Because we all want to do better, right? We want people to think we're good at the thing that we're doing, especially once you dedicate your entire life to it. But imagine that you take someone on and you're like, okay, how do I do this thing? And they're swooping in like, no, this is how you do it. And we all know, right? Like the first second when someone sort of starts talking about it, you're like, you know less than I do about this, right? And so get naked is number 3. Now, to be clear, this is emotional nudity, not physical, okay? So being vulnerable and being transparent, the most important thing is being teachable, right? Let me tell you one of the things that I never say, ever. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. For years, I had to build that out of my language. Yeah, I know. Okay. Now I have 2 kids, 6 and 9. And when they tell me that, oh, you know everything? Okay, boo, do what you want to do. Let's see. Let's see how it works out for you. What am I here for? You know everything. I used to work for that federal judge. Remember I told you, and every morning he would come into my office and we would chat. And in the end, he asked me something. I worked for him for 4 years every day. And he came in and he said, Mario, I noticed that I'm remembering that sometimes I tell you a story and you pretend like you've never heard it. Why is that? And I said, Judge, because I don't want you to stop coming in here. Because you're right. Toward the end of the 4th year, if he told me 10 stories, I had heard 9 of them. Right? But I didn't want him to stop for that 10th one. Right? And so I would pretend to not, oh yeah, Judge, so then what happens next, sir? Right? And the reason for that is you have to develop humility and you have to be transparent about what you don't know. Right? Because the first step, think about it like this. When I was in college, so I graduated at the very top of my class in high school. Top 10%, I got into UT automatically. Right? Just went straight to UT. I went to UT, did really well, then went to law school, one of the top law schools in the country. Right? And then I was at law school, and I finally figured out, I said, you know what? I got to figure out this comma thing. I didn't know how to use commas, and I was a law student. And so I did something really crazy. I went into a writing professor's class at the law school, and I said, Professor, I don't know how to use commas. Can you help me? Well, Mario, didn't you graduate at the top of your class in high school? Yes. And to get in here, you must have done pretty, yes. And you know how to use commas? No, ma'am. Will you help me? Yes, sir, I will. And now I can tell you in the Red Book, which is the standard legal writing book of the legal profession, there are 13 rules of commas. And I have them all memorized. And so when I tell someone like this comma is wrong, it's not just because it feels wrong. I can tell you, this is an introductory comma, you don't need it for throat clearing. This is an A positive, you don't need it. You need a non-restrictive clause here, right? But I had to admit that I didn't know how to use commas. Think about how wild that is. How many of you in this room, and you don't have to raise your hand, know that you don't know things, but don't admit it? And so so how are you going to get better if you don't admit it? So that's what Get Naked is about, right? It's about, I don't know something, but I want to learn. And it's scary to admit that you don't know things, right? Because we all want to know all the things. And here's the thing, as you sort of go up higher and higher, people expect you to not admit things. And I'm telling people all the time, I don't know anything about this. But you know what's really cool? When you're the higher rankings you go and you tell people, I don't know, here's the crazy part. People will help you. Because people want to be of use. People want to be of service. So they say, okay, you don't know about this, let me teach you. And now imagine that you're talking about something that I know nothing about, and you've dedicated your entire life to it. Why? Because you love it. So now I'm giving you an opportunity to speak about something you love. Right? Like what I love is I love law. And so when I'm done being the chancellor, I'm going to go back to practicing law. And let me just tell you just what a big old nerd I am about law. Like, I love it. I will watch shows 24/7. I will read all the books. I can't get enough of it. My only shame is that I only get one life to live, and I only have the average age expectancy to practice law. Because I will never master it. That's why it's called the practice of law. Now imagine talking to somebody about something that they feel like that about, whatever the topic is. But you won't meet those people if you're too smart to admit that you don't know the things. So you have to get naked and be transparent. Onward, forward. You will make mistakes. Here's the thing, if you're not making mistakes, you're not growing, folks. I've had some boondoggles over the years. Some boondoggles. And I'm going to tell you one real fast. So one of the greatest mistakes I ever made at Lone Star, and at the time, here's the thing about really big mistakes. Like Mark Twain said, it's the things that we are most certain about that are spell doom for men. At the time, I thought it was the greatest idea ever, which is why it was such a catastrophic mistake. I thought to myself, you know what? I am going to have check-in counters at Lone Star to take people's temperatures during COVID, and I'm going to have third parties come in and do the checking because that way our own employees don't have to do it. And I thought people were gonna like praise me and be like, go Mario, like that's the great. It was the worst idea ever. For many reasons. Let me tell you the main one. People get lost that come here every day or every other day. Now imagine that you're some third party that has never set foot at this location and you've got to find the commons. At 5 a.m., I would get morning calls from everyone because I was in charge of COVID response. Hey, where's this building? What campus are you on? Right? And you haven't lived until you've explained to a complete stranger how to get to Winship Building at North Harris. Think about that. How would you do it if you're half asleep? It was horrible. It was a terrible thing. But I learned now. So now when someone walks in and says, I have a great idea, Chancellor, let's do checkpoints. I'm like, no, it's a terrible idea. Going back to rule number 1. Do you have experience doing this? Why, yes, I do. Let me tell you, back in 2020, I did something like that. So if you're not trying, you're not going to make mistakes, right? Whether you're learning a new language, right? So a lot of people speak with accents. And so let me just tell you about accents, like it's all about perspective. When I hear someone with an accent, there's some people with accents, like my parents, for example, and I had an accent for a long time, that you work really hard to hide your accent, right? But I'm going to tell you, there's people out there like me that when I hear an accent, I'm like, man, this person's really smart. And they're like, why? Because you speak at least 2 languages. And the question that I always ask myself is, what other language do you speak? I'm curious as to what other language you speak. And if it's a language that I don't speak, I'm super blown away because I'm like, oh, how did you learn that? Right? And so it's a bridge instead of a roadblock. And it's all about what's in here. How do you see it as a perspective, right? And so again, if you speak with an accent or you're learning a new language like I have, right, you're going to make mistakes. And let me just tell you, the English language is super hard, right? Like night, for example. You know how hard I struggled with night? Night, like a medieval night, and night as in tonight. What's up with that? Can we not come up with separate words to like I speak Spanish too. Spanish is super easy comparatively speaking to English, right? And so again, you're gonna make mistakes and it's perfectly okay. Another mistake that I made during COVID is I let people decide how much PPE they were gonna get. Now, if I came to you and I said, how many gloves do you need? Do you have any idea? No, most people didn't. And so they were like, I need 2 million gloves. And I didn't know any better, so I ordered 2 million gloves. Right? Or another one, has any of you ever laid eyes on a 55-gallon drum of hand sanitizer? We bought several. And then I learned that one does not just open a 55-gallon drum, you have to have a special tool to open the tops, and I had to order the tools. And then they're super heavy, so people were like, oh, just put it on my truck. I'm like, nah, boss, that ain't happening. Like, this thing's real heavy. And there's 55-gallon drums still at a secret location in Lone Star right now that people were like, hey, have you gone to see these drums? Right? So we already talked a little bit about this one. Leadership is earned, not given, number 5, right? And this is a really key thing. The very first email that I sent as chancellor, I said, the board of trustees has made me the chancellor and the boss, but it is up to every single employee to decide whether or not I am your leader. So one more time, someone else can give you the title. Someone else can give you the position, the money, the rank. Only the people can give you their hearts. You can't force someone to believe in you. You can't force someone to think this person's got my back. I'm on this person's team. And this person's on my team as much as I'm on theirs. You have to earn that. And how do you earn that? As a leader, you have to trust first. You have to show respect first. You can't expect somebody to do it for you because you're the boss. That's how you always stay the boss. And to do the great things in life, the really remarkable things, you have to have the people. You have to be the leader. And I can tell you, right, like when you look at it, doesn't matter if we're sacking groceries at Albertsons. I had the fastest front line. In fact, they offered me a store manager position if I didn't go to UT. I was 18 years old. I grew up in a household that had less than $20,000 between both of my parents. Less than 20 grand between both of them. They offered me 60 grand to be the store manager. Man, I thought that was super rich, right? Like I can buy all the name brand stuff now. Goodbye, Hill Country Fair. Hello, Coca-Cola. Y'all laugh, but if you haven't lived that, you don't know, right? And I'm telling you, like when I graduated from law school, one of the first things that I did when I became a lawyer, I went and bought a half a pallet of Capri Suns and French bread pizzas. And I ate them until I couldn't eat no more. Because I made it. Because where I grew up, I was on free and reduced lunch. And so those two items you couldn't get if you were on free and reduced lunch. So for years, I would walk by that line. And I bought so many of them when I went to Sam's, and I bought so many of them that I literally got sick. It was one of the best days of my life. And so number 6 is defeat the blank page, right? And so one of the things that I did for 4 years for the judge is I wrote his opinion. So I would literally start with blank pages. And so now people are like, Mario, you send out these like huge emails. Like, how long does it take you? Here's the thing, it doesn't take me that long because for years and years, I wrote opinions all day. And I mean, I hand wrote them, people, not on a computer. I hand wrote them. And then I would type them, right? Because here's a little tip that I'm gonna give you. Writing, you can write better if you handwrite first and then type. Because most of us can actually type faster than we think because it's muscle memory. So one of the lessons that I cultivated over 4 years is handwriting my legal opinions for the judge. And the other briefing attorneys were like, you're out of your mind, I don't have time for that. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay, I'm acquiring a skill. And so now I sit on my computer and I'm like, brrr, like I can write. I can churn out 10, 20 pages in the morning, right? Because I've spent so much time worrying about sentence structure, words, right? In fact, I can tell you that toward the end, the judge would tease me. He would say, Mario, we don't have time for your intellectual vanity. Just get the opinion out. The parties don't care about using just the right word. They're going to scroll all the way to the bottom of your opinion and see whether they won or they lost. And here's the thing, he was absolutely right, because when I became a private attorney, I didn't care. I just, right? Or, right? To the bottom, motion granted, calling the client. Hey, have you read it? No, I haven't had a chance. I just wanted to let you know we won. Right? And so again, the best way to get started is just to get started. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. Right? But one of my favorite things about running, for example, is, let me make sure I get this right. Make sure I get this right, because I usually mess it up. So here we go. See, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. Finish last is better. Finish last is better than did not start. Right? So think about it. In January, I'm going to run the marathon. And I've actually had a pinched nerve in my back for the last month, so I'm a month behind in my training. And last night I went running for the first time, and I've lost a lot in a month. But you'll see me there in January, running my little marathon 2 hours after Casey, right? But here's the thing. You can run a marathon really slow and judge yourself by how slow you ran it and get in that mindset, or you can say, I ran a marathon today, or I walked a marathon, or I crawled a marathon, right? And I can tell you, I have crawled a marathon. It took me 6.5 hours the first time that I ran a marathon because I really limped it. I hurt myself at mile 11. Someone came out of their house and was like trying to help me because I had like this huge strain in my leg. And they administered salt tablets and rubbed my leg. And they're like, sir, this person had been trained, folks, because they were like, I need to get your consent before I touch your leg. I was like, just please do whatever, right? And then I'll never forget, I got up and I started limping away like this. And the med team came to come sort of cart me away. And I was like, no, right? And I'll never forget these people that came into the house. They're like, sir, you're not even close. It's 15 miles away, because I was at mile 11. Well, it was the first time I had actually not gotten injured in the training. He says, I'm going to finish this thing. And so I wobbled my way for 15 miles. Now, the lesson I learned is don't do that. Because I was in pain for about 6 months, which is when I started taking triathlon, and then I did Ironman, and that's a whole different sort of thing, right? So, got to move on, because I got to finish on time, or else they want to invite me back. So, kill them with kindness is number 7. So, strong leadership requires compassion in addition to strength. Here's one of the really important things that I learned from working for multiple federal judges. So these people cannot be fired. Can you imagine working for someone that can't be fired? And they can put people in jail? These are some very powerful people. And so I've seen examples of it being used very badly by people that were just on mega power trips. And I learned how not to be powerful. I also learned from one of the greatest humans I've ever met, the judge that I worked for, about how to be a very powerful person and be cool. And here's the thing, here's how much respect I have for Judge Resio. He hasn't been on the bench for 10 years. I haven't worked for him for almost 20. And when he calls me right now, I still stand up. I don't know why, but every time he calls, if I'm sitting down, I grab the phone and I stand up. Yes, sir. What can I do for you, Judge? He's like, Mario, you can just call me Felix. Judge, that will never happen. I have too much respect for you. He is one of the most kind people I've ever met in my life. And it's little things, right? Like he would correct people when people were like, these are illegals. He'd be like, no. Human beings are not illegal. You will not call him that in my courtroom. And the federal prosecutor would say, well, that's what the United States Code says. Be that as it may, in these four walls, I am the federal court, and you will not call him that. By the same token, a lot of the U.S. Marshals would call the detainees bodies. I got 10 bodies. No. You will not call them bodies. These are human beings. And one of the key things that Judge taught me is we tend to judge ourselves by our best examples and judge other people by their worst. Right? So when you're kind to someone and they don't expect it, it's so powerful. It's completely disarming. When someone's like really mean and rude to me, I think to myself, who has hurt this person? Why is this person this way? Because here's the thing, right? When we come into this world, when we're babies, like, has anyone ever, well, yes, I'm going to ask the question. Has anyone ever met like a really mean baby? I have. But for the most part, babies are not born mean. People are not born mean. We are conditioned to become mean, to be unkind, right? And so I can tell you one of the things that I always tell people is it's people who deserve our love and kindness the least that we should give it to the most, because that's who needs it the most. And so a lot of times I can tell you that being a strong leader means being compassionate and kind when a lot of other people would not be. And so I'm going to give you an example, actually, because we just posted about it on social media today. This is my first year as chancellor. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, and I've heard it all by this point, why do you put a lawyer in charge of an academic institution? The only reason he's chancellor is because of DEI. That joker didn't earn it, right? I've heard it all. Like I didn't work here for a decade. Like I wasn't chief operating officer, president, and general counsel at the same time. I did all three because my dad used to say, you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get half. I wanted the whole thing, so I worked 4 times as hard, right? And so I faced all of that. Coming into the summer, then, our enrollments were down. And people started talking about, this is why. See, this is why you don't put someone like that in charge. And so Hurricane Beryl hits, and I decide to close the entire system and let people focus on their families. Because that's how I was raised. Family first, job second, right? And so I closed for 2 weeks. And I posted on LinkedIn, our enrollments are down. Yes, I know, thank you. And you know, the lesson that I learned is a lot of people that sell enrollment-related stuff will contact you, so don't do that. So I did this, and here's what I'm gonna tell you. One of the things that I said on there, I said, I have full confidence and faith that if we take care of people, they will take care of us. If you're like, you're out of your mind, this is why we don't let lawyers be in charge. So let me tell you, today we just posted, we had 91,885 students register this fall. And the reason that's important, yes. That is the all-time record. There has never been a semester where Lone Star College had more students than it has right now. And I can... And we were down 8% people, and we ended up 3.5% up. And so someone asked me the other day, what do you attribute this to? I said, the answer is simple. We put people first. We took care of people. We closed down. We didn't expect you to come to school or to work if a tree was in your house. Who does that? Right? And so when those people came back to work, let me just tell you, I would come to the campuses, including this one, and there was just like a buzz, like people were grateful. Think about working at a place where you don't have to take time off because we got you. We're going to pay you even though you didn't work because we got you. You need a little bit of extra money, the foundation's going to give you money. You need to move the deadlines that you had, we're going to move them. So imagine then when we reopen now, I'm all about it now because they had my back. So now I'm going to have this college's back. And this chancellor who has a bunch of garbage that is being thrown at him, I'm going to make sure he survives because I like that he closed for those 2 weeks. And the people took care of us. Right? And it was an act of kindness and compassion at a time where a lot of people would have been fearful. And a lot of people were fearful. So kindness goes a long way. Number 8, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, folks. If you're sitting around for like, I just want the conditions to be perfect, you are burning the most valuable asset that you have, which is time. No matter how successful you become, no matter how rich you become, no matter how many glass ceilings you shatter, every day you have less time than you did the day before. So if you get super serious after today, some of you are going to be like, yes, I love my little Subway lunch. It was okay. Mr. Castillo went on too long. And then there's going to be some people that are like, okay, I'm all about it now. I'm going to do the thing. Right? In fact, that's my motto, do the thing. And I'm wearing socks that say, do the thing. Look. From the feet up. That's what my dad taught me. When you do something, you do it from the feet up, son. So when I got up this morning, I said, what socks am I going to wear to this thing? Do the thing. Be that intentional. What are we doing? Number 9, conquer your fears. Here's the thing, right? Fear, I love this fear initialism. Fear everything and rise. That can be fear. You can be afraid, it's okay. But courage, right? Like when you walk up to one of these counters over here in advising, it is a complete act of courage to say, I want more than I have. I want more than my mother and my father gave me. They did the best they could, but I want more. I want more than my homies. Yeah, guys, I had homies. Yeah. I had people that asked me what set I represent. Right? And I can tell you, I go into those neighborhoods, I will fit right in with my little hoodie, my Air Force Ones. Right? I will fit right in. I will code switch for you so fast. You'd be like, you practice in front of the Supreme Court? Yeah, Holmes, I did. What about it? You know, I keep track of my ops. I ain't joking, right? So, conquer your fears, right? And here's the thing, like, one of the most beautiful things is to make it and make it as yourself. Because what is the point of making it if you can't be yourself, right? So a lot of times, I spend a lot of time, people ask me, like, what is your favorite this? What is your favorite that? Or I've seen people see me things at places and they're like, I'm shocked that you're here. What do you think I do? Just wear suits and be Chancellor all day? Right? I have a life. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I like to do things. Number 10, manifest it. So let me tell you, for manifest it, listen to how powerful this is in this last few minutes. For the longest time above my dorm frame, I had Mario K. Castillo, Esquire. And every time that for those of you who don't know, Esquire means you're practicing a lawyer. And so my buddies would come in and be like, hey man, or yo dude, you want to go hang out? Where we going? You know, play some Madden, drink some brewskis. No, I don't. I got to study. In fact, I'll tell you, when I got married to my wife, when my father-in-law was giving the toast, he's like, there was something very unusual about Mario compared to the rest of Jessica's boyfriends before him. Her GPA went up when they started dating. My wife hates when I tell that story, so don't tell her. But, because here's the thing, my wife, she would be like, let's go party. No, we got to go to the stacks in the library. We got to study, because you got a backup plan. I don't. This is my plan. This is it. If I don't make it, my family's not going to make it. I don't have fancy house in Kingwood like you do. That's where my wife is from. I don't have that. I don't live in no Kings Point, right? I don't have that. I don't have backup. You want to do drugs? No, I'm on financial aid. No one will find out. I'm not willing to risk it because I know that on one of those questions on financial aid is, have you done drugs? And if they catch me and I lose my financial aid, I am done. So I can't take that risk. Because here's the thing, I love my family, I love myself more than I love whatever you're about. You want to go hang out? I'll hang out now. I can hang out all weekend. I hang out for 2 weeks every winter break. And I call my friends, the same friends. I'm like, hey, man, you want to hang out? I got to work. You ain't got to work? No, I'm the CEO. Right? You ain't got to ask for time off? No. And some of my friends come over to my house right now, and I still live in the same house I did 10 years ago when I was an associate. Some of my friends have literally come to my house and just stood there and been like, man, I should have paid more attention in school. But now they're 40-something-year-old men. And here's what I'm here to tell you. It's not too late, even if you're 40 years old. If you're 40 years old and you're listening to me and you want to walk back there and turn the page, we're here for you. Because that's what's so elite about this institution. It doesn't matter if your parents have money. It doesn't matter if you came from the right families or not. None of that matters. The only thing that matters at this institution is your willpower. You don't have money, we will help you. Right? You can't afford your books, we will give you books. You don't know what to do, we will find someone that tells you. You need somewhere to live, we will find somewhere for you to live. There are no excuses. This is a no excuse environment. Right? All you got to have is ganas, willpower. And the last thing is make business fun. Loving what you do is the key to success. Let me tell you something. Working at a law firm for most people was absolutely awful. People hated it. I loved it. I worked like 18, 19, 20 hours a day, and I loved every minute of it. I would get so excited that I would wake up the next morning and be at my desk at 5 a.m. I would skip lunch, and my associates, my co-associates would be like, what is wrong with you? Let's go to lunch. I'm like, nah, y'all go to lunch. I got to read this case. And here's the thing, they would be like, and it got me in trouble sometimes, right? Because let me just tell you, some people go to law school for the wrong reasons. They don't love law like I do. And so then you would come work for me, and I'm a partner now. And I love law. And so it got me in trouble a lot because I had to get sat down by some people that I trust to be like, everyone doesn't love law the way that you do, and you expecting them to behave the way you do is completely insane. You realize that, right? No, you're going to practice with me. You're going to roll with me. And I had such a problem with the lawyers in my office that I said, I'm going to go on my own floor. Yeah, so I moved floors. There was a vacant floor. I was like, I don't even want y'all. It's like a disease, laziness. I don't want it anywhere near me. I don't want to know what time you leave. I don't know what time you come in. I don't care because I'm about me. And eventually, here's the thing. I collected 3 or 4 lawyers that were just like me. And then we had our whole floor. And on that floor, we outbilled everyone in the entire law firm. Because we loved it. The bills were secondary. And we won lawsuits because we love to practice law. How do you think someone that's 31 years old becomes a chief legal officer of the largest institution of higher education in the state of Texas? You gotta love it. That's the only way. And so here's the thing, it's not easy. The last bit that I will tell you is this. This whole nonsense about find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life is nonsense. I had some terrible work days. I still do. But if you're doing anything of significance, it's going to be hard. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I love is people ask me, Mario, when you're done, what do you want it to do? Man, that guy did everything that he could with what he had. There could have been another thing that man could have done. When that guy left, that gas tank was on E. There was nothing left. And that will be a life well lived. Thank you, guys.
All right, let's give them one more round of applause. I would like to bring Dr. Nutt up and Chancellor Castillo, if you could stay up here. We want to thank you for taking time out of your day. For taking time out of your day, and then we have a conference leadership shirt for you. So thank you so much. We are going to break out into our sessions now. We have trash cans all around the commons. If you would go ahead and throw away your box lunches and then head to your next 2 sessions. And then we're going to reconvene back in here once your 2 sessions are over, complete our survey, and then we'll hand out your conference shirts.